The only podcast you can truly trust.
Max said, what up, baby? How we doing?
How's it going, H?
Good. Welcome back, co-host with the most. How's your week going?
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Much better than last time.
Good. Okay. Well, that's good. Positive. So you took some of the advice from stress and anxiety
The cold
and
showers
dopamine.
are working, yeah.
Yeah,
The cold showers
fantastic,
work.
mate. This is what we like to do. We like to take difficult subjects and break them down into little bite-sized pieces so, developed chimps like us can somehow understand them and
Speak for yourself.
factor them into our own life. So, Matt, my head's heavy with all the knowledge that I'm carrying around for everything that we've prepped for this week's podcast. It's a really exciting one and something that I think is so overlooked by modern society and most people. I certainly didn't have a clear understanding about it before we started researching the show. So today we're talking about the gut-brain axis. So we've got some great tips, some great information on what is the gut-brain axis, why it's important, why people should care about it, and ultimately what you can do to optimize it and really feel and perform your best. Let's dive in, shall we, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. When I first joined Supplement Factory, it was probably about 6 months, so say, end of 2023. That was when I first heard about the gut-brain axis. And honestly thought, what a load of shit. I was like, you're telling me that my gut controls my mind. Like, how are they even connected?
Yeah, I was exactly the same. So for those of you that don't know, the gut and the brain, they're linked so closely. It's something that I think most people don't have a clear understanding of. They're in constant communication via a complex system called the gut-brain axis. And essentially, the balance between your gut and your brain, it influences not just digestion, not just movements and things like that, but it also has a really, really big effect on your mood, cognition, everything like that. So the gut is often referred to as the second brain, and we've all heard, trust your gut feeling and things like that. And there's some real science behind it. It's because there's more than 100 million neurons in the gut. So that's more than your spinal cord, that's more than your sort of nervous system. And because of that, it's got such a profound effect on pretty much every aspect of your life, your health, your energy, your mood, your digestion. And what we found is, there are obviously a lot of things that negatively impact and have some really detrimental effects. But there's also some really easy steps that people can take to improve that and feel that all throughout their life. So the very sort of boiled down version of it, which is always what you're going to get from us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is your gut's home to trillions of microbes. So we all know about bacteria in our stomachs. We've all heard it. I think we spoke before about, was it Danone, the gut-friendly yogurt?
Yeah.
Yakult. That's what it was. Sorry, not Danone, but it was the Yakult, wasn't it? Where basically it turned out to be complete bullshit in the end. But
Yakult, don't come after us.
Yeah, we're not. No more lawsuits, please. But essentially, your gut, it's home to millions of bacteria, fungi, viruses that form the microbiome of your gut, and they don't just help with digestion and movement and things like that, but they produce the neurotransmitters that influence your mood, your brain health. And I think you had a great analogy, which I'm going to steal here. In fact, I had half of it and you came up with the other half. But
We're a team here. We're a team.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why you're so much better than I am. I'm like, no, I came up with that. And you're the one's like, no, team effort.
Team effort.
But, if your gut is the factory, then your microbiome, that's the employees that keep it running.
And your brain is the CEO.
Your brain's the CEO. So happy employees, productive, working the factory well, then the CEO is happy and thriving. So that's the sort of, really basic connection that we sort of want people to visualize when we're talking about it through this episode, right?
Yeah, and one thing that I found, this was amazing to me, is a study was moving the gut bacteria from a anxious mouse, yeah.
Mouse, yeah.
Mouse,
Yep,
we'll go with mouse. Moving it from an anxious one to a, let's say, normal behaving one, it made that one anxious as well. Just that bacteria, it's not like the mouse is anxious because it's got to go to work or anything. It's just the bacteria on its own was enough to make that other mouse anxious. Yeah. It's amazing.
So it has that much of an effect on it. And I think one of the things that absolutely blew my mind when we were looking at the gut-brain axis is 90% of the serotonin, that feel-good chemical that's released in our brain, 90% of that is produced in your gut. I had no idea about that. So we're going to drive into this a little bit more, but your feel-good neurotransmitters are derived from the gut. And this is why your gut health is so closely related to your mental health. So anxiety and depression, a lot of these things stem from poor gut health, which I think is something that I certainly wasn't aware of. And I think probably the majority of people aren't.
No, it's amazing. Like autopsies of Alzheimer's patients have shown that they have high levels of gut bacteria toxins in their brain. So Alzheimer's is a quite important thing for me. My nan has very much struggled with it. And to see that it's the gut that can be causing this. As soon as we knew she got diagnosed, we're like, right, take lion's mane, because everyone knows it helps with the brain. Let's have you drinking water, going outside and exercising. We never mentioned about the food she's eating and actually looking at the gut bacteria. I never went, should give her probiotics. This might actually help. That sort of thing. I think it's something that not many people actually realise, that the gut could be the root cause of a lot of your issues.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is a really big and a vastly overlooked thing. We're talking about depression, anxiety, all these sort of mental health issues that are rife in the modern world. I think diet is probably quite far down the list when people are thinking, right, actually, how is my gut health impacting that? I think it's really overlooked. And I think, the key here is like a healthy gut microbiome equals a healthy mind. It's not a loose connection. They are so strongly connected and both impact one another. It's a two-way street. So, a healthy gut helps a healthy mind, helps keep you positive. Vice versa, if your mind's not in a great condition, that will then negatively affect your gut. So I think, we spoke earlier, and one of my wonderful colleagues was mentioning, taking a nervous shit or taking a nervous poo, if we need to put this out somewhere we can't swear too much. But I've heard the expression. I think people sort of all know about it, but it turns out it's a real thing. It's not just an expression. If you're feeling super stressed and super anxious, then guess what? That translates all the way down through all the way through your bowels.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so connected, and I think we always go, oh, you need to eat healthy and whatever, but you don't realise why. So it's a common thing. Everyone's like, oh, got you healthier. Jamie Oliver's come around and says, eat healthy. It's like, because you don't want to be fat. But it's also because it will help your mind as well.
Because I don't want to wake up every morning feeling like I might cry as well. Yeah. So, and on that, and again, our BTEC rationale, because that's all we can provide. Before people get upset about that, I had a bloody BTEC at college, so I'm not shitting on people. You can still do something with it. But it's essentially, like I mentioned earlier, gut feelings. It's the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve, VAGUS nerve. Putting it here. Thank you, Timothy. But basically, it's the main communication pathway between the gut and the brain. And it plays that critical role in regulating stress, digestion, mood, everything like that. And it also has, it can be stimulated. So it can be in a positive way or a negative way. And like we said, this is why sometimes when people have really bad stress, I always like to think back to that episode of The In-Betweeners. I think we brought up for the episode of The In-Betweeners where Will was doing his I don't know, it's his GCSEs or his A levels or whatever. He's caning the energy drinks, but also it's probably all the energy drinks combined with the extreme levels of stress and pressure. It just plays absolute havoc with your bowels.
Yeah, and one thing I read about was it can change in 24 hours. It's not like you can eat healthy and then you can eat awfully for 3 weeks and then eventually you'll start seeing it bad. It is as quick as 24 hours.
Yeah.
That bacteria in your biome is it's not the strongest, it's microscopic. It will die quickly and the bad stuff will take over. So eating bad will have an effect so fast to your body. Yeah. So fast. It's not, you have to be careful with this and build it up and care for it. It's almost like a garden. You can destroy it very quickly, but it takes a long time to grow.
Months and months and months to develop, but you can destroy it just like that. Yeah, absolutely. I know the feeling all too well. So I think, the key highlights that we're trying to bring to people's attention that we want to talk about in this episode is essentially taking care of your gut is a proven way to boost your mental wellness and overall optimization for your body. And I think another really key consideration for the gut microbiome, I didn't realize this, 80% of your immune system resides in as a result of your gut.
I had no idea.
80% of it. So I think those people that get ill, a couple of times every few months, or, if you're one of those people that feels constantly run down, again, this could be really valuable information for you. And I think I've certainly been implementing some of the bits we've been talking about, and I felt a really great boost in energy. I've certainly felt much more positive in my day-to-day. So what we're going to do is have a little bit of a closer look at what impacts the gut microbiome, what impacts the gut-brain axis. And then, as always, we've got some great suggestions for how you can take some steps to improve that across lifestyle changes, supplementation, diet changes. And these are really easy to implement steps that I think everyone can do without too much effort and will leave you feeling, 20 times better than you were a few weeks ago.
And the one that I'm definitely going to take away from this, and I think it's the most important one, if I had to give one thing I could say to help your gut microbiome, is about a high sugar diet. Having a high sugar diet for just 1 week is enough to make your mind become depressed.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, just high sugar. And I'm someone that fucking love sugar.
Oh, I
I'm addicted to it. I was like, give
Don't
me that
let the
sugar,
physique
put that in
fool
the,
you. I live
put
on
that in the
sugar.
veins. Yeah, and it's amazing to how it doesn't make you. So I'll get my words correct here. It doesn't make you depressed. It will make your mind mirror that of a depressed person. So you're not going to constantly, right now I need to go to doctors and get some antidepressants or go to therapy because I've had a bit of sugar. It will trick your mind into being like that. So you can change it again, but just from having high sugar diets, which, as we've been over in many other episodes on the podcast, it's bloody everywhere, sugar.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from. I did a sugar cleanse. I did a completely sugar-free diet for about 2 months. And when I first talked about it, I was like, oh, this will be easy. Sugar's in everything, like ketchup and carbs and so many things. It's really difficult to get away from. But what I did find is not only did my mental health drastically improve, but also your energy levels are just stable throughout the day. You don't have these peaks and valleys, so you wake up in the morning and you really feel so awake and energized. So there are some huge benefits here, and I think if we haven't already, I think to really highlight the importance of the gut-brain axis. So that well-balanced microbiome, it's not just your mood that it affects, but it also affects like cognitive function. So you'll have better memory, focus. It gets rid of that kind of brain fog that we were talking about earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah, and brain fog, if anyone's ever experienced it, it is so frustrating because if you ask me a question about something I don't know, I'll just say, look, H, I don't know the answer. I'm not too fussed. But if you ask me what's 10 plus 10 and I sit there going, I know this, I've done it when I was 5 years old and I can't answer it because I've got this brain fog. It's incredibly frustrating. It hits your confidence and it just all round doesn't make you be able to live your life almost. Brain fog is seriously detrimental to your career, to your friendships, if you just can't answer things. If it's all being caused by your gut as well, it's...
Yeah, this is the difference between me and you, though. When people ask me questions I don't know the answer to, I'm just like, I'll start talking and something will magic its way through.
You do the Jordan Peterson, so I'm going to talk and an answer
I do
will
the
come.
Donald Trump, or I'll just give you an answer to a completely different question. They'll be like, China, oh no, great and wonderful. I'll just work my way around it. And I'll just talk long enough that people are like, is that the fucking question we asked? Well, I don't know. God damn it, he sounded confident about it.
Are you trying to get a career in politics here, H?
Honestly, when I was a kid, I was like, I couldn't think of anything less interesting. But now I'm getting there. It's the day I realised I might be good for politics is the day like Matt Hancock's Affair and everything came out. I was like, this sly motherfucker. I was like, maybe politics could be for me after all. But bringing it back to the gut-brain axis, though, all jokes aside, I think we've touched on, energy. We've touched on cognitive ability, but I think another really interesting one is there is emerging studies that are showing that the imbalance in that gut bacteria, it's also linked now to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and those are typically late onset diseases that they have. But there's also a huge amount of that applies to younger people. So in early life, imbalances in the microbiome, like during childhood, that influences conditions like autism, other, sort of neurodivergent conditions like ADHD, everything like that. So I wonder how many of these children these days, where we have such sugary foods, and I think, I know it's difficult to argue with a kid, but when you're giving them loads of sweets, then you've got these really difficult to manage children. How much of this is through the gut microbiome?
Yeah, absolutely. It's from one study I've read again was said that your gut health today will determine the health issues you have in 30 years' time. So if we're saying that kids are having ADHD because of poor diets now, God, they haven't got a chance. If this really is a precursor to Alzheimer's, is poor diet. It's poor things.
We spoke about this at lunch today. I'm kind of pissed off because now these days, ADHD and neurodivergent, they're beautiful, wonderful miracles, and we have to do it. Man, I had ADHD in the 90s when I was just considered a really naughty child and I was just difficult. I had it before it was fashionable and cool. And it's really interesting reading this because with the bad gut microbiome, my favourite thing as probably a really small child is I love to drink undiluted squash. Man, if I could get my hands on like a bottle of Ribena, I would just sit there, just no water in it whatsoever.
It's got to be a precursor to a heroin addict's right. That is young man's heroin.
Whenever we do these shows, and I really found the stress and cortisol ones that we did really interesting. But there are so many things that when we're researching, I'm like, oh, this is me. It really applies. This is why we love sharing these messages. But that was the one that really struck me there when it was like talking about the microbiome and everything like that and ADHD kids. And I was like, yep, there we go. Cheers, mum and dad. Just we lived in the little wild west as we were growing up.
Yeah, I owe my mum an apology because she's like, you're a sugar addict and I'm going to stop you having this. And I thought, you're a Nazi, mum. You're stopping me having fun and stopping me living. And now I've realised, actually, she cared about me. And I'm grateful for her to try and stop me having so much sugar. Because she, without realising it, it's actually, I don't think she was doing it to fix my gut microbiome. Her eyes would probably glaze over if I told her about that.
Yeah.
But it has the right effect. Parents, stopping your child having sugar, you're doing all the right things.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think it's being that cruel to be kind, isn't it? I think if you know what's better for them in the long run. But again, I think it's so difficult to combat as a modern parent with all the adverts going on and everything's so catching and eye-grabbing. It's got to be difficult. And then also as well, there was always that kid at school where they had nothing but completely organic food and they weren't out any sweets, and you're like, freak, what the hell's wrong with you?
Green, what is this? Food's not supposed to be green.
So we've touched on why it's so important, the sort of the positive effects that having a good healthy gut microbiome can have, as well as some of the really detrimental things. So I think what would be really interesting is let's take a closer look at what it is that disrupts it. What's really bad for your gut microbiome, and then off the back of that, we've got some great suggestions. It's always just basically giving the negatives just in reverse of what we can do to improve it. So you already touched on one, Matt, which was diet, obviously. So a huge consideration. Of course, all food goes through the gut. Give us your thoughts. What are the bad aspects? What's the good and the bad on diet-wise for the gut microbiome?
Processed food. And I actually asked this earlier at lunch. It was, just because it's processed, does that mean it's bad? But it's actually changing the makeup of the food. And usually when food is processed, you're putting additives in with it as well, these harmful additives. Red Lake, I think it's Red 40. Tom, you might have to correct me on there, but I think it's Red 40. Found a lot of American stuff. That will just eat away at the gut bacteria.
Yeah.
It will absolutely destroy it. Another one for diet. Now, I don't know if alcohol counts as diet, or is it? We're not sure. It's definitely part of my diet.
It's definitely a factor in your diet, isn't it?
But yeah, alcohol is a killer. You don't have to, it's pretty obvious. Alcohol is going to be bad for your stomach.
Yeah.
And that is a big killer of your gut bacteria. One that people don't realise, I'll put this in with diet because you consume it, which is antibiotics.
Yeah, absolutely. I never understood that previously. If, let's say, you had an issue 6 months ago and then you needed antibiotics for it, I think I used to get bad tonsillitis. They never ripped them out. But I remember going back to them 6 months later and they just refused to give me antibiotics. I was like, it's the same thing. And I didn't realise that, again, it's those antibiotic overuse that, they're essential for treating infections, but basically overusing it can massively disrupt the microbiome of your gut. And it's the same as well, if I'm not mistaken, for ibuprofen and paracetamol. You forget, and if you're hungover, you'll bang a few, but when you look at the packet, it's you have got to consume food first. And again, it's because this absolutely just destroys your gut microbiome.
Yeah, and it'll happen very quickly in how it destroys it, and it'll take a while for you to build that back up. So it's these quick fixes. Again, we spoke about this a lot on the podcast. These short-term fixes have long-term effects on your body.
Yeah. And I think another really big one is emulsifiers as well, killing your gut bacteria, which are in so many of the foodstuffs that we have. So we've used diet there as a broad range, but we've sort of said, high sugar and really processed foods, alcohol, which essentially is just sugar as well, low fiber diet, so not eating your fruit and vegetables, and of course antibiotics. But then lifestyle, and this is what is so amazing. And again, to reiterate, it's a two-way street. It's not just what you put into your gut that affects your mind, it's what you put into your mind that's also affecting your gut.
That's great.
That's a clip there for the socials, Tom.
Chris Williamson, eat your
Dot
heart
that
out.
one there, absolutely. So it's things like chronic stress. We mentioned that with the in-betweeners show, but chronic stress really affects it. Sleep deprivation, I think, over the past few years, that old expression, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, you'll be there a lot sooner if you don't fucking sleep. Yeah. So I think sleep deprivation and a poor sleep schedule, that really disrupts the gut microbiome as well. And then there's other bits, lack of physical activity. I could harp on about that until my face goes blue. But a lack of physical activity is a really bad one. And then also another huge consideration is hormone balances. So we've actually got a really special guest today who's going to come in. She's a little bit shy, so we're going to give her the warmest of welcomes. We've got our wonderful colleague, Tony, coming in, who's finally going to add a little bit of diversity and break up this sausage fest a little bit. So give us 2 seconds. We're going to make some space for Tony, and we'll be right back, guys. And please, everyone, give it up for the wonderful Tony Cowell. Tony, come on in.
Welcome to the podcast, Tony.
So, Tony is a dear friend and colleague who really kindly came out for lunch for us, and she had so many really wonderful opinions and feedback on the podcast that near enough made me and Matt cry. So we stupidly were like, "Why don't you fucking come and do it then?" And here she is. So Tony, thanks so much for coming along. How's your week going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, it was quite interesting to finally bring a female perspective to the boys' chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's come to break up this love fest between me and Matt, and So, Tony, for the people at home, so how long have you been working for in supplements and wellness now?
So I've been with the company pushing 3 years now.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yes.
So, Tony, despite her wonderful demeanour, Tony doesn't take too much shit, does she?
I would say I'm probably here to push back on you guys, give my opinions more than the facts.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah, definitely a female perspective.
It's a bit like having a Care Bear threaten to stab you sometimes with Tony. She's so lovely and wonderful.
I may not be the most talkative,
Yeah,
but
doesn't take too much shit.
a look can speak 1,000 words.
So, Tony, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, gut-brain axis. We had a really nice chat about this earlier, and you just had some really interesting points about how it affects women's health in particular. That's maybe something that we've slightly overlooked in this show.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is obviously, researching, hearing what you guys were chatting about and then researching it myself. A big focus for a female is their menstrual cycle. So, this for me goes back to how that's all interlinked, and even some of the bits I was reading was pretty mad. I think one of the biggest things I dropped on you guys was, across, say, a 4-week period of a cycle, you've got your peaks and troughs between estrogen, progesterone, and how that affects, your bowel, essentially. And then, whether it's your progesterone affecting constipation, estrogen giving you the period poos, which turns out neither of you had heard about.
I had no idea. No idea.
Yeah, I had absolutely
Never
zero
heard of the
clue of that.
phrase.
We did some fairly extensive research. We spoke about this at lunch earlier. No, unfortunately, my partner hasn't said that because we're trying to keep the magic alive. And, our wonderful...
16 years in, young daughter,
Start
a
loosening
dog,
up a bit.
there's a lot of poo conversation.
Yeah. And then, obviously, we've got a good audience of nerds and virgins as well. So that's what Matt is.
That's
the key
quite
demographic
authentic.
there. So, no,
I would
he's
go and
not
ask my
got
partner,
experience.
but guess what? They don't exist.
Yeah. Matt's like, do you have any of these period poos? Yeah. So, no, Tony, and like you spoke about, your mother now, how old's April?
She will be about 21 months now,
Yeah,
so not far off
exactly.
too. So
And we spoke about this in the sort of Western culture. We don't talk about pooing too much, but actually, obviously, when you have a small child, it's a really important thing that you and your partner need to talk about.
it's a daily occurrence.
Yeah, and then to a much lesser extent, and I'm not for a minute trying to say that this is the same thing, but again, we've got a 2-year-old Labrador now, so of course, when you've got a young dog, you and your partner do have to talk about when they are pooing, so you can make sure the dog's been let out enough times, and you're not trapping them in. So, you just had some great opinions. I think you're a great personality as well. I know you didn't want to be here, so I appreciate you letting us wear you
I'm
down.
in great company. I'm sure you guys will look after me.
Yeah, we'll try our best. But hormone imbalances. So you've sort of touched on it there, but please give us kind of that summary again, because I think just being stupid men, we didn't really appreciate how many weeks of the year this actually affects women.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, 52 weeks in a year. You've got a lot. Each month, you're looking at a different track. Obviously, every woman's different. There's obviously all the different cycles around, the menopause and things, hormones changing. But in theory, for example, I'm a 36-year-old woman. So say my cycle is 4 weeks. There's 1 week of that I'll be on my period. And yeah, your bowel habits change in a month, I suppose. But when I was actually reading into it a bit more, it was really interesting in how, as I mentioned, you've got your peaks and troughs with all of the different hormones and things. But actually, I didn't realise that estrogen gets reabsorbed into your body, and that's done in your gut. So in theory, if your microbiome is off, then that will affect how your body reabsorbs these, like the estrogen. Yeah. And then obviously, again, it's just such a knock-on effect. So like you mentioned before about how it affects your sleep, it affects motility, mobility, like all of it. And I think that's a big thing that, for women, it's not just brain health, it's not just gut health, it's, the full picture of how it would affect everything.
So if anything, from the bits that you've read and you've sort of highlighted, we've been talking about all the negatives, the sort of pros and cons of the microbiome. But if anything, it's more prevalent for women. It's even more, infectious.
You will notice it a lot more.
Hormones.
Exactly, it's a constant change, and that's the thing. It's not like, obviously, men have hormones. There's different types of hormones, be it your serotonin and everything else. But equally, the change of that across a month is very varied for women, and obviously even from woman to woman, that would be different. It's not just all women are the same. So you might be shocked to know.
Yeah, I was. I can tell by Matt's face. He tuned out 2 minutes ago. He was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mentally writing this down for my future partner. I'll be like, period poo. I know about this.
Just tapping on the door. It's like, you're right, sweetheart. Is it a period poo?
Should I avoid?
Yeah.
I have a probiotic primed and ready.
Absolutely. I think as well, we've got a little bit more to go as well on the podcast. We'll save that for in a few minutes' time. We'll start looking at the fecal matter. But before we do that, I think we've got... Let's run through. We've gone through what's detrimental to the gut microbiome, but I think we've also got some great suggestions on what we can do to improve it, to balance it. Matt, let's throw it over to you. Give us a couple of suggestions. What can the listeners do to help improve their gut microbiome and therefore improve the gut, improve the mind, improve their energy?
As I just mentioned, probiotics is probably the first one everyone thinks of, which is... And you got to correct me on this, guys. I'm not entirely sure. Probiotics is a bacteria, isn't it? It's a living bacteria in something similar like a yogurt or a Yakult. And you'll take that, and that should sort everything out.
Yeah,
Now,
it's a live bacteria that supports your gut health. So, they're gaining a lot of popularity, and again, it sort of helps all the systems. It's that good bacteria, and like we spoke about earlier, Yakult, we're obviously scamming people for years when there was actually none in there, but there are some very credible products out there, and a public service announcement as well to the listeners. Just because it says probiotic on the label doesn't mean that's what you get.
Exactly what I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
It's right. It blew my mind when we spoke about this before, about how the packaging makes a huge difference in terms of if a probiotic is alive or not. It's crazy how people can sell a product, claim it's a probiotic, people take it thinking it's helping you. Reality is it's all dead.
You think about how sensitive your gut is, and you're trying to bottle something to help it. It's going to be sensitive too.
Yeah, so I think it's packaging that's a huge impact, and then also the other ingredients that are in it as well. I've worked with brands before. They said, right, let's put probiotics in there. I'm sure you've seen this, Tony, throughout your career. And they're like, okay, yeah, great. We'll put some of those there. We'll say, by the way, with these other ingredients, these sort of more acidic ones, the probiotic's going to die. And people are like...
I want X, Y, and Z. And it's like,
right.
what's priority?
Sometimes the question you get back though is like, yeah, but do we got to tell people? And you're like, no. They're like, oh, so it's just an ethical consideration. They're like, fucking do it. Yeah. So I think that's a really big one. And then... prebiotics, which actually you can find in natural foods like
pre and post.
Yeah, perfect. So your prebiotics we can get in foods like garlics, onions, asparagus, pretty much anything that's going to make your breath stink. Stinky breath, but a great gut.
All about balance, what we were saying earlier.
Yeah. So I think other good options. I think Tony, you mentioned this earlier, fermented foods.
Yeah, so obviously there's so many drinks around these days
like,
as well.
It's kombucha, isn't it?
Yeah,
stuff like
and
that.
you've got your kimchi, and obviously I think a lot of people's diets are changing these days. Vegan. Obviously it's January. Like a lot of people are going vegan for the month.
Yeah.
You got a lot of vegetarians. Obviously the alternatives out there are really good as well. But I think it's also going back to that sort of more awareness on how it's affecting your gut. So that's why I think some of the brands that are coming out with all that stuff, they seem to be everywhere. I don't know if you've, even at cafes and things, it's not just in the supermarket, you can pick it up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're huge at the moment. I think firstly, it's really fashionable. It's really cool.
Some of the branding's
really
cool.
Absolutely. But I think, I wonder how many of these people know how good it is for them.
I think it also goes back to, there's a lot of people as well that I think post-COVID, people are trying to grow more as well. And it's something that like fermentation, you can easily rustle it up at home, leave it in your fridge for 2 weeks, 2 months, longer, and keep going back to it.
Yeah, I've got a friend, and he's local, and he's got this really fantastic kombucha, and it's all handmade by him, and he's sort of he does it all himself, and he gets so much interest in it, but he can't produce any more than he does, and he's just like, I want to ensure this product's 100% perfect. I put my name to it. I don't want to start developing a factory or hiring people because it comes from my heart, and I do it. And I was there like, fuck it, let's get it over to China. We'll make it for pennies on the pound. We'll sell it to everybody. And he was like, this is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do.
You go to loads of like the little like farmers market type stuff. I think I went to one in Faversham, and like you go up to your borough market and your bigger ones and stuff. And there's all the stalls up there selling like homemade and things, and it's obviously selling.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's clearly a demand for it. Absolutely, this sugary vinegar piss water, but people are like, oh, please, love me some kombucha. I think as well, we've gone over already the negatives that you can do to the gut microbiome. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's kind of just do the opposite of what we were saying 10 minutes ago. But obviously, it goes without saying, high fiber foods. Eat some fruits and vegetables. I know it's a saying as old as time is, but that's just a really straightforward one. It's not rocket science.
At lunch, we were talking about obviously when you speak to people in their old age, you go 70, 80, 100. what did you do? What would you recommend? And we were saying the fact that, actually balance. You can have a pint, you can have a bit of this, you can have a bit of that, but don't overindulge in those
There's always the
things.
120-year-old that smoked a 40-pack a day. It's like, they're the outlier. They're the exception, not the rule. The
Yeah,
most
where's
part is
the balance?
It's always the balance.
Yeah, exactly. So, like we did with the negatives, those are the bits that we're ingesting, those are the bits we're putting into our body, but also as well, what we're putting into our mind. So, managing your stress effectively. So mindfulness, meditation. Ever since we did the stress podcast, I've been doing affirmations every day.
Nice.
Probably boosting my ego a little bit too much.
Have you been talking to yourself in the mirror?
No. I drive 100 miles. I drive 60 miles an hour to work every day, just screaming at the top of my voice, like, nothing can stop me. I am wonderful. And actually, I think my fiance hates it. She's like, you're pretty unbearable as it
I've
is.
actually spoke to your manager and we're going to have an intervention.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a
But
problem.
the hour drive to work in the morning
There's
is
a
me.
slight concern there, Harry.
My hour drive to work is me just telling myself how wonderful I am on repeat, and then I get to work in the morning like, God damn it.
Okay,
I
we
am
need to
good.
bring you down a notch or two.
There needs to be like middle ground affirmations, not like you're wonderful and everyone loves
are
you and
average,
kind.
you are
There needs to be
sufficient.
something like you're okay. There's still a little bit of work
You're
that
a
you
solid
need to
7.
do. Yeah, well, you're not perfect, but you're pretty good. But no, I get out of the car being like, world's mine. Yeah, and then on top of that, breathing exercises, and then social interactions, hobbies, all that stuff that we know is really good for your mind, that translates to the gut and vice versa. And then, of course, like we spoke about, good regular exercise, but not overdoing it. I think if you're doing David Goggins styles ultra marathons, I'm sure you guys have heard this, like marathon runners shit themselves like all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's
actually why I don't do
someone who's
marathons.
Yeah.
It's actually why, yeah. It's not the sole reason.
That's the only reason. I did a half marathon once and was like, that's as far as I go, 13 miles. And then, of course, getting good sleep and probiotics, not abusing antibiotics, things like that. And of course, just staying hydrated. Really.
There's one key one you haven't mentioned here, Harry.
Please.
Eating poo.
Matt, that was a really, really interesting one. Yeah, absolutely.
subtle sort of
Look at
introduction
that.
there.
Perfect. Just segue and slide into that. Yeah, absolutely. Matt, please. So, healthy microbiome. Go and eat some poo. That's what you're saying.
Yep, you've heard it here first.
Please enlighten us, Matthew.
It's called FMT. It's called fecal microbiota transplantation. So as we spoke about the mice earlier, giving it a bacteria from an anxious mouse, putting it into a normal one, and then it making that mouse anxious. This is the same for humans, but doing the reverse and being beneficial. We're taking the bacteria from someone's healthy gut through their shit, through their fecal matter, and then giving it to someone with an unhealthy gut, and then it fixes it. Okay, now specifically it's for people that struggle with the C. diff bacteria,
Yeah.
which is strong diarrhea and then heavy gut problems. We're not talking about mild upset.
I've got a bit of bloating, so I better have some shit. No,
this
you've
is a
got to be
serious
pretty
medical
desperate
thing.
to get that.
But the studies are showing this is super successful. It is. It blew my mind that you could eat poo and become better off.
I in prep, I like this. We do all preparations separately, and then we bring it together, and it's nice how we end up on a lot of the same talking points. The studies show that the success rate was in excess of 90%, and I think that's the sort of results you need to have if you're going to tell someone we're going to
Eat someone else's.
we're going to take someone.
I feel sorry for the 10% because he's ate shit and not felt better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're going to put someone else's shit inside you. I think if someone's like, it's a 50-50 chance, you'd be like, no way. No, but they're like 90%, you'd be like, 90%?
But doesn't this show that actually, the numbers that are probably increasing on diagnosis for any sort of bowel disease, the fact that they're going to these extreme types of trials must prove that the numbers are just growing with all these issues.
There's demand for it.
They wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work. And Matt, I know you're sort of half joking there and sort of saying about people eating it, but there's a variety of ways. So first things first, they've got to screen that donut. There's no good, taking Timothy's poop over there. We've seen his diet. We know what he does. That's not poop that you want put
Risky
into
game.
Yeah, you want someone really nice, clean, someone you're like, she does eat a lot of apples. I see really clean diet or whatever. But I know that they can basically screen it, and then there's a couple of different ways. I know you've said about capsules, but also they can put it in there through colonoscopy. Lee, as a man of a certain age, what's colonoscopy?
Well, that's when you have a camera up your bottom,
Yeah.
and it can be inserted
And they're just-
during that period of time.
And they're just like, while we're down
Well, I
there,
don't know why you think I would know that. I mean, I've had a lot of cameras up the bottom, obviously, but
had a hunch,
how it's done.
and then
Oh wow!
obviously they can do it through the enema. as well. Or Matt, I think like you alluded to, capsules.
Yes, capsules is certainly a peculiar one. They recommend to take it with apple juice or something that's similar to try and help it go down the system. Probably it's not
Apple juice and shit.
It's not because of the flavour in the mouth. It's because you don't want the capsule to pop too early. Because if it does, you will get poo burps.
Have you,
Tony's face.
Yeah.
I'm mortified.
Do you ever take cod liver oil, Tony?
No, I've taken peppermint.
Yeah.
I take peppermint capsules, and even that's like, that's quite pleasant.
When you get a repeat and you've got mint coming up, I've had like cod liver oil before where it's a bit old and then like before you know it, it's like
I've
mid-morning.
had heartburn in pregnancy. That is no
I'm like
fun.
burping and I'm getting fishy breath back. So this is
Where are these studies going on? Are they in the UK?
Yeah, in the UK.
Okay.
You can actually donate your poo to the NHS.
You've looked into it.
I've looked into it. Unfortunately, you have to be inside the M25, which I'm not, so I can't help
Considering relocation.
Yeah, I can't help the country with my poo at the moment. It's a shame.
You're like, I'll do it for free. I might as well try and help somebody. The thing that I dread to imagine is in capsule format. I'm like, who's putting that? Who's getting the capsules done there? Is that on like a proper production line, or is that just one person in a lab like, gloves on, like another day, another dollar. Let's just
poor
get these
apprentice.
little, exactly.
First day on the job, and right there you go.
Yeah,
Bottle that
that's
up.
what we do to the work
Intern.
experience. Yeah, that's what we do to the work experience people here.
The other one that will blow your mind is you can have it through the nose. In a tube, through the
Really?
nose to the stomach.
I mean, that's going to repeat on you.
Yeah, I can't think of any way worse to get it in. Yeah.
It's like human centipede. It's connected straight from the source.
But it does. But it outcompetes the harmful bacteria. It reestablishes that balance. And like we said, it's got a 90% success ratio. So I'm sure no doctor and no patient is doing it just for a laugh or doing it for fun. People must
you
really
can't deny
find
the
some
numbers.
beneficial. Yeah, absolutely. So I like as well they've coined it FMT, so people can just I've got my FMT appointments. They don't have to constantly say
A bit more subtle.
fecal microbiota transplantation. People are like,
I was reading online. I was looking, and it was like, this has really helped my gut. It's like it's life changing for me. I'm like, I wonder what that is. You see it, and you start reading one sentence. You're like, oh my fucking god, someone's like proud of this.
yeah.
If
It
it's going to
blows your
help
mind.
them, it must like really improve that quality of life. And like we said, going back to it, if you've got these big problems,
Big
you
solutions.
need to change.
And all jokes aside, I think it's really easy for us to sit here as people and have a good laugh about it when we're not affected. But absolutely, there are people who are at the absolute end of their tether, who've tried everything else that aren't having the results. And
We've all
they're
been laying
really
in
struggling.
bed incredibly ill, going, I will do anything to not feel like this.
Yeah, exactly. And, I joke around, but yeah, if I was one of these people that was like, right, I'm struggling to work, I'm struggling in my day-to-day life, after 6 months, I'm sure I'll be much more receptive to it as well. I think just quickly, that's obviously the most extreme step. There are a lot of steps we can take before that. And I think there are a lot of supplements that can really help. So probiotics, prebiotics, omega-3 we've discussed. And then kind of a lot of the other stacks that people generally take. So Vit D, magnesium, ashwagandha, simple stuff that has a lot of practical applications, not even just for your gut-brain axis. But like we always say, it's important to have that holistic approach to it. We can't have a crap diet and a crap mind and then be like, oh yeah, but I take a couple of omegas and some probiotics. No, you've got to clean up the diet, you've got to get the exercise, and with the supplementation, bring it all together to really get those results. And like we always say, supplements are wonderful, but it's a helping hand. You can't smoke 40 Super Kings a day, down a bottle of whiskey, being like, had those 2 multivits though, so I'm all good. Yeah,
we wish it was the case, but it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, the sort of mental health is the other 50% of it. It's just as important. I think as well, I really can't go over the FMT, to be honest with you. I feel like I've started to smell it in the room now. I've been thinking about it for a little bit too much.
Yeah,
No.
definitely needs a woman's touch on this podcast.
Yeah. I'm glad you came in for this one. So I think as well, before we wrap up, I think there were a couple of other bits, Tony, that you mentioned that were really, really interesting on the gut microbiome. And Matt, we touched on this before, kind of everyone wants everything quick and easy and without doing the hard work. And, we talk about diet and exercise and, there are so many shortcuts these days like
Diet and exercise, remind me.
Like Ozempic.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this one back.
Well, exactly. Well, this is where we were talking about things like, it's mad when you look back sort of 50 years or something, and, ultimately our culture now is consume quicker, more media, food, all of it.
Instant gratification, dopamine and reward without having to actually fucking do anything.
Exactly. And you want something now. But it was a case of, there's all this chat going on about Ozempic. Actually, what's going to be the repercussions of this in 5, 10, 20 years' time? We talk about, you mentioned about ADD earlier, and, whether, looking back, was it sugar or, what could have affected it? So what side effects are we going to be seeing from that? Everyone's after this quick fix for weight loss. And
they're not having a mixed diet while having it. You're having this awful diet.
You're reducing your diet
The
and then
calories
probably
are
not
barely there.
making wise decisions
Ruining the gut
anyway.
biome as a result.
And there's already talks around, effects on, I think, predominantly bowel, but I think, liver, kidneys as well. So where are we going to be in 10 years' time?
Yeah.
What other pandemic of something that's going to come out of it?
Who could have thought a quick fix has long-term effects? It's like quick fixes tend to always be negative.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a quick win, doesn't always work though.
Yeah, and it's about building that healthy lifestyle. But you're right, there is this sort of culture now of quick and easy, and I want it now, and I don't want to do the work, and it's like gastric bands and Ozempic and liposuction.
extreme, isn't
yeah,
it?
And people are cheating themselves. And okay, they'll drop some weight, but yeah, absolutely. When you don't have a good diet, and you're not taking care of yourself. What are the long-term health effects? And Ozempic's been around for what? Let's say conservatively a year or two now. Yeah,
rolled out, I
What
suppose.
does it look like after 10 years on that? And I understand that it's used for proper medical purposes, but then also as well, there are so many people who are just going to kind of on the dodgy.
Yeah, people abuse it, and you hear about things globally and how available it is to other people abroad, and there are going to be people that take it to the extreme.
Yeah.
So there's going to be repercussions, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of the take-home message for everyone here is, it's not to undervalue the gut-brain axis. Your gut has as much as an influence on your mind as your mind does on your gut, and breaking news, the big take home is have a healthy diet, do a bit of exercise.
Whoa, groundbreaking
Try
stuff
and keep
here.
it fairly positive.
Can you imagine your GP telling you that?
Yeah, it's kind of the stuff your doctor's been telling you for the last 50 years or whatever. and your
I
mum
think a
was
lot of
telling you.
people going to the GP, though, that have got a lot of these issues that we mentioned, like if a GP turned around and was like, well, you need to be eating fruit and vegetables and drinking water, there's going to be a lot of unhappy NHS patients.
What will motivate them though is, so if you don't eat healthy now, you're going to have a poo capsule. So
Yeah,
eat
you're
healthy
gonna have a
now.
few of these.
Bananas,
Yeah.
poo. Make your
But it is.
decision.
Scaremongering.
I do think so much people are like, I'm depressed and I'm anxious. And I think a lot of people, if you could step back and look at their lives and be like, you're not depressed or anxious. You've just got the appropriate emotional response for your life. You're eating crap. You do no exercise. You don't have, you're constantly on your phone. You're constantly chasing those dopamine hits. You don't have good boundaries. You don't have good people around you. You're not depressed. You're just at the accurate emotional level for what your life is, and it's up to you to improve that. It's up to you to take those
earlier
steps.
we were saying, you think about how far things have come with talking about mental health in sort of the last 5-10 years even. And, previously, 10 years ago, everyone was like, do a bit of exercise, get down the gym, and it was just physical exercise to look after your physical body. Now it's mental health as well as part of that. We talk about that so much more, and it feels like now we're finally pushing sort of, again, what is the extension of that, and it's your gut.
I know, all jokes aside, when I talk about my meditation, my affirmations, I think about that. That's reps. That's weightlifting for my mind, baby. That's me just strengthening it up.
It's a great way to
Invest
say
in
it.
yourself.
Weightlifting for the mind.
Yeah.
I love a good way to put that.
Exactly. A library is a gym for your brain. You heard it here first. So, gut-brain axis.
Where do you pull it?
I know. This is it. The editing team just have a hell of a job. I see them in the corner sometimes just being like, right, 32 minutes 45, edit that bit out. I don't know how they piece these together.
These are actually 3 hours long.
yeah, and they only come out at 30 minutes. Yeah, that's all they can get out of it. But guys, gut-brain axis is a two-way communication. Your brain's as responsible for your gut as your gut is to your brain. You shouldn't look at it as just your crap factory. It is your second brain. It has such a huge influence on your happiness, your anxiety, your stress, your sleep. And having that balanced microbiome is going to give you a better life, a better mind, better emotional well-being, and vice versa. If you treat it like crap, you're going to feel like crap. And I think that's a pretty good place to leave it. Mindfulness, exercise, a good diet and good supplementation, that'll fix pretty much any of your problems that you have in life. I think people need to understand that, take one thing away from the podcast is there is such a critical link between those two areas. They're not completely separate. And people who are struggling with these issues, try some of these suggestions for a few weeks, a couple of months, and, to see how much better it can make you feel. Right, guys?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Tony, it's been lovely having you. Anything you'd like to add today?
No, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Tony, we
been
loved
great.
having you. It's wonderful to finally have a woman's perspective on the show. We'd love to have you back anytime you're free, as long as they don't replace me with Tony. I did kind of have this worry earlier on. Matt Maxter, baby, always a pleasure.
Love it.
And then we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for joining. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you guys want us to talk about next. And we'll see you next week.
The trust.